The sound echoed through the grand ballroom like a gunshot, silencing 500 conversations at once. Naomi Patterson's head snapped to the side, her diamond earring catching the light as it swung wildly. Her cheek burned. The champagne glass she'd been holding shattered against the marble floor. For 3 full seconds nobody moved. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Camera flashes froze. Even the ice sculptures seemed to hold their breath. Then the screaming started. "Get him!" someone shouted as security guards rushed forward. But Naomi just stood there, one hand pressed against her stinging cheek, staring at the man who had just slapped her in front of everyone who mattered in her world. He was thin, dressed in layers of torn clothing that smelled of the streets. His beard was matted, his face weathered by sun and hardship. But his eyes, those eyes were looking at her with something that made her stomach twist. Not hatred. Something worse. Disappointment. "You forgot!" he screamed as 3 security guards tackled him to the ground. "You forgot where you came from. You forgot everything." The guards dragged him toward the exit, his shoes squeaking against the polished floor. The crowd parted like water, everyone pulling back in horror and fascination. Phones were up everywhere now, recording, streaming, posting. In seconds this moment would be everywhere. Naomi's husband Trevor appeared at her side, his hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked, but his voice sounded strange, distant, like he was reading from a script. She couldn't answer. She was still staring at the doors where the homeless man had disappeared, at the spot where he'd stood before attacking her. Before her perfect evening had shattered along with her champagne glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator's voice crackled through the microphone, trying to restore order. "Please remain calm. Security has the situation under control. Mrs. Patterson is fine. Perhaps we should take a brief intermission." But Naomi wasn't fine. Her legs felt weak. Her vision swam. This was supposed to be her night. Her company, Patterson Technologies, had just hit 10 years of operation and $1 billion in value. She'd spent months planning this charity gala, bringing together investors, politicians, celebrities, and business leaders. She'd personally overseen every detail, from the menu to the flower arrangements. Everything was supposed to be perfect. Instead, she'd been assaulted in front of everyone she needed to impress. "We should get you to a private room," Trevor said, already guiding her away from the crowd. His colleagues from Benson and Associates followed, creating a protective wall around her. She recognized Candace among them, Trevor's assistant, her face painted with concern that looked almost theatrical. They led her to a private sitting room off the main hall. Someone brought ice wrapped in a cloth napkin. Someone else called the police. Trevor made phone calls, his voice serious and professional. But Naomi couldn't focus on any of it. She kept replaying the moment in her head. The way the man had looked at her. The pain in his eyes. The specific words he'd chosen. "You forgot where you came from." How did he know where she came from? Naomi had worked hard to bury her past, to build a new identity as a self-made billionaire. Very few people knew she'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes until she aged out at 18 with nothing but a high school diploma and a fierce determination to never be poor again. She'd put herself through community college, then university, working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. She'd learned to code in a public library. She'd started Patterson Technologies in a basement apartment with $2,000 and a dream. Now she employed over 500 people. She had a mansion in the hills, luxury cars, designer clothes. She'd married Trevor, a handsome financial consultant who looked perfect in photos and knew all the right things to say at dinner parties. They had 2 beautiful children, Mia age 7 and Jordan age 5. From the outside, Naomi Patterson had everything. So why did that homeless man's words feel like the truth? The police arrived and took her statement. They showed her a photo on a tablet, the man's booking photo. His name was Robert Lawson, age 38. He had a record of petty theft and trespassing. No history of violence. The officers seemed confused about why he'd targeted her specifically. "Do you know this man, Mrs. Patterson?" the detective asked. Naomi studied the photo. Something about his face nagged at her, like a word on the tip of her tongue. But she couldn't place him. "No," she finally said. "I've never seen him before." The detective nodded and closed his tablet. "He'll be charged with assault. With your profile and the number of witnesses, this is an open and shut case. He's probably mentally ill or on drugs. Sometimes homeless people fixate on successful folks. It's not personal. But it felt personal. Very personal." After the police left, Trevor convinced her to go home. The gala continued without her, which stung more than her cheek. She'd worked so hard, and now she was missing her own event because some stranger had decided to humiliate her. In the car, Trevor scrolled through his phone. "It's already trending," he muttered. "Someone posted the video. It has 2 million views." Naomi closed her eyes. Of course it did. In the morning, she'd wake up to think pieces about billionaire privilege and income inequality. People would dissect her expression, her dress, her reaction. They'd debate whether she deserved it, whether the homeless man was a hero or a villain. Her entire life would be examined and judged by people who'd never met her. She touched her cheek where the man had struck her. It still burned, but not from the physical impact. Something deeper hurt. Something she couldn't name. "You forgot where you came from." As Trevor drove through the night toward their perfect house with its perfect security and perfect view, Naomi stared out the window at the dark streets. Somewhere out there, Robert Lawson was sitting in his cell, probably cold and hungry. And despite everything, despite the humiliation and the pain and the viral video that would haunt her forever, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been trying to tell her something important. Something she desperately needed to hear. 3 months earlier, before the slap that would change everything, Naomi's biggest worry had been whether to wear navy or charcoal to the board meeting. She chose navy. It photographed better. "Mom, I can't find my science project." Mia's voice echoed down the hallway of their 6-bedroom house. Naomi checked her watch. 7:15. The school bus came at 7:45, and she had a conference call at 8. "Check the dining room table," she called back, simultaneously answering an email on her phone and mentally reviewing the presentation she'd give to investors later that day. Patterson Technologies was expanding into artificial intelligence, and she needed to secure another $15 million in funding. Trevor emerged from their bedroom, straightening his tie. He looked good as always. Tall, fit, with perfect teeth and perfect hair. When they'd met 8 years ago at a networking event, Naomi had been immediately drawn to his confidence and stability. He came from old money, the kind of family that summered in the Hamptons and had university buildings named after them. She'd been a scrappy entrepreneur with big dreams and bigger debts. Their marriage had seemed like proof that she'd finally made it. "Don't forget I have dinner with the Benson partners tonight," Trevor said, grabbing his briefcase. "Probably won't be home until 11. "Again?" Naomi frowned. "That's the 3rd time this week. We're closing the Hendricks deal. You know how important this is for my career." He kissed her forehead quickly, barely making contact. "Your success isn't the only thing that matters in this family, Naomi." The comment stung, but she didn't have time to address it. Jordan was crying in the kitchen because his waffle was the wrong shape, and her phone was ringing with an urgent call from her CTO. By the time she got both kids fed, dressed, and onto the school bus, dealt with the crisis at work, a server issue that threatened to crash their platform, and made it to her office, she'd pushed Trevor's comment out of her mind. She was good at compartmentalizing. It was how she'd survived foster care and poverty. You didn't dwell on pain. You just kept moving forward. Her assistant brought her coffee at 9. Your 10 o'clock with the investors got moved to 11. And there's someone from the foster care alumni network online too. They want you to speak at their fundraiser. Naomi hesitated. She didn't usually accept speaking engagements related to foster care. That part of her life felt like someone else's story. But the woman on the phone was persistent and kind, and somehow Naomi found herself agreeing to think about it. After she hung up, she sat staring at her computer screen without really seeing it. How long had it been since she'd thought about those years? The group homes with their strict rules and rotating cast of kids. The foster parents who ranged from genuinely caring to openly resentful of having another mouth to feed. The constant feeling of being temporary, unwanted, in the way. She'd promised herself that once she escaped that life, she'd never look back. And she hadn't. Until now. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "Forgot to mention, Candace is joining us for the dinner tonight. She's been instrumental in the Hendricks deal." Naomi frowned at the screen. Candace again. Trevor's assistant had been mentioned more and more frequently lately. She was young, 26 or 27, with perfect makeup and a way of laughing at all of Trevor's jokes. Naomi had met her a few times at company events and found her pleasant enough, if a bit too eager to please. She texted back, "Okay. Don't stay out too late." No response. The day blurred into meetings and decisions and problems that needed solving. By the time Naomi got home at 7, the nanny had already fed the kids dinner. She spent an hour with them, reading stories, helping with homework, listening to Jordan's long explanation of why dinosaurs were better than robots. These were her favorite moments when work fell away and she was just mom. After tucking them into bed, she went to her home office to review tomorrow's schedule. Trevor still wasn't home. She called him, but it went to voicemail. Probably still at dinner. She told herself it was fine. He was building his career. She understood the demands of ambition. But something nagged at her. On impulse, she opened her laptop and navigated to their cell phone account. She could see call and text logs for all the phones on their family plan. She'd never checked before. It felt like a violation of privacy. But now, staring at the screen, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Trevor's number showed dozens of calls and texts to one number. She clicked on it, bringing up the details. The text started at 6 in the morning and continued past midnight. Every single day for the past month. She cross-referenced the number with her contacts. Candace. Her stomach dropped. Maybe it was work-related. Trevor and Candace worked together. Of course they'd communicate frequently. But at 6 in the morning? At midnight? She clicked on the call log. 15-minute conversations. 30-minute conversations. An hour-long call at 11 at night just 2 days ago. Naomi sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She could feel the careful compartments in her mind starting to crack. The explanations she'd been making for weeks, his distance, his late nights, his phone always face down on the table, suddenly seemed like lies she'd been telling herself. She looked at the clock. 10:30. Trevor had said he'd be home by 11. She waited in the dark office, her laptop screen the only light. At 11:15 she heard the garage door open. At 11:20 Trevor walked past her office, heading straight for their bedroom. He hadn't even checked to see if she was awake. Naomi didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she stayed in her office, staring at the call logs, feeling her perfect life crack a little more with each passing minute. In the morning, she'd go to work and smile at her employees and make brilliant decisions for her company. She'd pick up her kids and help with homework and pack lunches. She'd maintain the image of Naomi Patterson, the billionaire CEO who had it all together. But in the dark, alone with the glowing screen showing hundreds of calls between her husband and his assistant, she allowed herself one moment of truth. Something was very, very wrong. And deep down she'd known it for months. The private investigator's name was Helen Torres, and she didn't believe in wasting time with pleasantries. Your husband is having an affair, she said, sliding a manila folder across her desk. The evidence is conclusive. Naomi had waited 2 weeks before calling Helen, 2 weeks of watching Trevor like a stranger, of pretending everything was normal while quietly gathering her own evidence. The call logs had been just the beginning. Then came the credit card statements showing hotel charges and expensive jewelry purchases Naomi had never received. The suspicious late-night showers. The way Trevor flinched when she touched him, like her skin burned. But knowing and seeing were different things. Naomi opened the folder with hands that only shook slightly. She'd built a billion-dollar company through discipline and control. She could handle this. The first photo showed Trevor and Candace entering a hotel together. The timestamp read 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Naomi remembered that day. Trevor had texted her that he had back-to-back client meetings. The next photo showed them at a restaurant, sitting close, holding hands across the table. Then more hotel visits. Different hotels. Different days. Always during work hours, when Naomi thought Trevor was being productive and professional. How long? Naomi asked, her voice surprisingly steady. Based on credit card records and witness statements, approximately 2 years. 2 years. Naomi did the math. 2 years ago, Jordan had just turned 3. Mia was 5. Naomi had been working 18-hour days to launch Patterson Technologies' new software suite. She'd missed birthday parties and school plays. She'd been so focused on building security for her family that she hadn't noticed her husband was destroying it. There's more, Helen said gently. I found text messages. A lot of them. She handed Naomi a tablet. The messages were recovered from Candace's cloud backup. Helen had connections and methods Naomi didn't ask about. What mattered was that they were real. Naomi began reading. Trevor, can't wait to see you tonight. Told the Ice Queen I have a late meeting. Candace, how old does she ever wonder where you really are? Trevor, too busy counting her money. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a corporation, not a woman. Candace, poor baby. Good thing you have me to remind you you're a man. Naomi's vision blurred. She kept reading. Candace, when are you going to leave her? Trevor, soon. I'm waiting for the right time. Need to make sure I get what I deserve from the divorce. Candace, you deserve everything. You've put up with her cold shoulder for years. Did you see her at the charity thing last week? She barely even looked at you. Trevor, that's because she only cares about her image. The perfect billionaire, the perfect CEO. She forgets I'm the one who introduced her to half her investors. I'm the one who taught her how to navigate high society. Without me, she'd still be some nobody from foster care. Naomi's hands tightened on the tablet. The words cut deeper than any physical blow could have. Trevor, I've been documenting everything. Her long hours away from the kids. Her obsession with work. When the divorce happens, I'll make sure I get primary custody. Candace, and I'll be there to help you raise them. We'll be a real family. Trevor, exactly. The kids barely know her anyway. They'll adjust. Naomi set down the tablet carefully, afraid if she didn't control her movements, she'd throw it against the wall. There's one more thing, Helen said. We discovered that Trevor has been using company resources to prepare for starting a competing business. He's been copying client lists, reaching out to your investors, and stealing proprietary information from Patterson Technologies. That's illegal, Naomi said. Yes, it is. Industrial espionage, breach of contract, and intellectual property theft. You have grounds for both a divorce and criminal charges. Naomi sat in silence, processing. Part of her wanted to scream, to cry, to drive to Trevor's office and confront him in front of everyone. But the smarter part, the part that had survived foster care and built an empire from nothing, knew that emotional reactions were weak reactions. What do you recommend? She asked. Helen smiled slightly. You're asking the right question. Most people in your position lead with their emotions. But you're thinking strategically. That's good. She pulled out a notepad. First, document everything. I'll continue surveillance and gather more evidence. Second, separate your assets quietly. Move money into accounts he can't access. Protect your company's intellectual property. Third, get the best divorce lawyer money can buy. And fourth, she paused, be patient. Don't confront him until you have everything in place. Right now he thinks he's getting away with it. Let him keep thinking that until you're ready to strike. Naomi nodded slowly. How long? 2 to 3 months to build an airtight case. I know that seems like forever, but trust me, it's worth the wait. When you move against him, you want to make sure he has no options, no escape routes, and no sympathetic judge. 3 months of pretending everything is fine. 3 months of protecting yourself and your children, Helen corrected. 3 months of making sure that when this ends, you're the one standing on solid ground. Naomi stood, straightening her jacket. Do it. Whatever it takes, however much it costs. I want documentation of everything. Every lie, every stolen file, every text message where they laugh about me. I want it all. Helen stood as well, extending her hand. You're going to be okay, Mrs. Patterson. I've worked with a lot of wrong spouses. Most fall apart. But you're different. You're a fighter. I've been fighting my whole life, Naomi said quietly. I'm not about to stop now. That night, she went home and made dinner for her family. Trevor came home at a reasonable hour for once, probably because Candace had other plans. He complained about his day at work, not realizing Naomi now knew every word was a lie. She smiled and nodded, asked appropriate questions, played the role of supportive wife. After the kids were in bed, Trevor reached for her in their king-sized bed. It was the first time in months. Naomi felt her stomach turn but didn't pull away. She couldn't let him know she knew. Not yet. Afterward, while Trevor slept soundly beside her, Naomi stared at the ceiling, planning. She thought about the girl she'd been at 18, alone and scared with nowhere to go. That girl had survived by being smart, by staying 3 steps ahead, by never letting anyone see her vulnerability. That girl was still inside her. And she was about to remind Trevor that you don't build a billion-dollar empire by being easy to destroy. You build it by being absolutely ruthless when necessary. And right now it was necessary. Naomi became 2 people. The first Naomi, the public one, went to work every day, led meetings, made decisions, smiled for cameras. She attended her children's school events, hosted dinner parties, and played the role of devoted wife. She was polished, professional, and perfect. The second Naomi, the real one, was a ghost moving through her own life, collecting evidence of her betrayal with the precision of a prosecutor building a case. Her lawyer, Patricia Okonkwo, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. She'd gotten more billionaires out of bad marriages than anyone in the state, and she didn't come cheap. But Naomi wasn't worried about money. She was worried about winning. Your prenuptial agreement is solid, Patricia said during their second meeting, reviewing documents in her downtown office. Trevor signed it before you had significant assets. He's entitled to essentially nothing from Patterson Technologies or your personal holdings. The house was purchased with your money. The cars, the vacation properties, all yours. He'll fight it, Naomi said. Let him. The prenup was reviewed by 3 lawyers, including one he chose himself. It's ironclad. What we need to focus on is the custody situation and his criminal behavior. Over the next 6 weeks, Naomi methodically built her case. Helen's investigators tracked Trevor and Candace to 11 different hotels across 3 cities. They documented lavish dinners charged to Trevor's corporate credit card, the card linked to Naomi's company. They recorded Trevor meeting with Naomi's competitors, offering them client lists and product information in exchange for promises of partnership in his future venture. But the custody issue kept Naomi awake at night. Trevor's texts about taking the children haunted her. Did they really barely know her? She worked long hours, yes, but she was building a future for them. She was showing them what was possible through hard work and determination. Or was she just repeating the pattern of every adult who'd failed her in foster care? Too busy, too distracted, always somewhere else? She started leaving work at 5 o'clock. Her executives were surprised but adapted. She attended every school event, every soccer practice, every parent-teacher conference. She had breakfast with her kids every morning and read to them every night. She documented it all, photos, videos, diary entries. "You're doing great," Patricia assured her. "This shows a pattern of engaged parenting. When we present this to a judge alongside evidence of Trevor's infidelity and criminal behavior, custody won't even be a question." Meanwhile, Naomi played the part of clueless wife with Oscar-worthy performance. She even agreed to marriage counseling when Trevor suggested it, a move she recognized as him building his own case. Look how hard he tried to save the marriage before leaving. The counseling sessions were surreal. Dr. Bennett, a kind man with wire-rimmed glasses, asked them about their communication patterns and emotional intimacy. Trevor talked about feeling neglected, about how Naomi's work always came first. He spoke with such sincerity that for a moment, even Naomi almost believed him. "I just want to feel valued," Trevor said, his voice cracking slightly. "I want to feel like I matter to her." Naomi squeezed his hand, fighting the urge to laugh at the absurdity. "You do matter. I'm sorry I haven't shown it enough." Dr. Bennett nodded encouragingly. "This is good. This is the kind of vulnerability that rebuilds connection." What Dr. Bennett didn't know was that Naomi was recording every session on a hidden device Patricia had given her. They were building a case showing Trevor's manipulation and lies. Every word he spoke in that office contradicted the text he was sending Candace. Trevor to Candace, same evening after counseling. "This therapy thing is perfect. When I file for divorce I can show I tried everything. The judge will eat it up. Candace, you're brilliant. How much longer do we have to wait?" Trevor, few more months. "I'm almost done copying the client database and product specs. Then I can make my move." Naomi read these messages with Patricia beside her, both women taking notes. They were building something bigger than a divorce case now. This was potential criminal prosecution for corporate espionage. "We could press charges," Patricia said. "Industrial espionage carries serious penalties." "Not yet," Naomi decided. "Let him finish stealing. The more evidence we have, the better. I want to make sure he can never work in this industry again." It was ruthless, yes. But Trevor had been ruthless first. He'd planned to take her children, destroy her company, and humiliate her publicly while pretending to be a devoted husband. Naomi was simply returning the favor with interest. The hardest part was the physical intimacy. Trevor started initiating more often, probably trying to seem like a committed spouse for the counselor's benefit. Each time felt like a betrayal of herself, but Naomi understood it was strategic necessity. She couldn't arouse his suspicions. Not when she was so close to having everything she needed. 10 weeks into the investigation, Helen called with a breakthrough. "We found the business plan," she said. "Trevor and Candace have been working with a venture capital firm to launch tech-forward solutions. It's basically a copy of Patterson Technologies, using your clients and your proprietary algorithms. The VC firm thinks Trevor has rights to the technology because he's married to you. They have no idea he's stolen it. Do we have documentation?" "Everything. Emails, file transfers, the complete business plan. He's been using your home computer to do the work, thinking you'd never check." Naomi smiled grimly. Trevor had always underestimated her. He saw her foster care background as a weakness, something to be ashamed of. He never understood that growing up with nothing had taught her to fight for everything. "Send everything to Patricia," Naomi instructed. "It's time to move." That night, she lay in bed beside her husband, listening to him breathe. In the morning, she'd set everything in motion. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of sadness for the marriage she'd thought she had, for the man she'd thought Trevor was. Then the moment passed. Sadness was a luxury she couldn't afford. She'd learned that lesson in foster care, when social workers made promises they didn't keep and families smiled while packing your bags for the next placement. You couldn't trust pretty words or handsome faces. You could only trust documentation, contracts, and cold, hard evidence. And she had plenty of all three. Sweet dreams, Trevor murmured in his sleep, reaching for her hand. Naomi didn't pull away. She just smiled in the darkness, thinking about tomorrow. Tomorrow, Trevor would learn what happened when you betrayed someone who'd fought her way up from nothing. You got destroyed completely. The charity gala was Naomi's idea from the start. She'd spent 3 months planning every detail, and not just for the obvious reasons. Yes, she wanted to celebrate Patterson Technologies' 10-year anniversary and billion-dollar valuation. Yes, she wanted to announce her company's expansion into new markets and humanitarian initiatives. But more than that, she wanted one perfect night where she stood at the peak of her power, surrounded by everyone who mattered, before she burned her old life down and built a new one. She chose a silver gown that photographed beautifully. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd conquered the world on her own terms. Trevor wore a custom tuxedo and his most charming smile. He worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and telling stories. To anyone watching, they were the perfect power couple. Nobody would guess that in Trevor's jacket pocket was his phone, which had received 17 texts from Candace that evening. Nobody would know that Naomi had documentation of every single one. Candace was there too, of course. She wore a red dress that was slightly too revealing for a professional event, and she watched Trevor with barely concealed longing. Naomi found it almost funny. Did they really think they were being subtle? The evening progressed according to plan. Naomi gave her speech, thanking her employees and investors, announcing the expansion and new humanitarian foundation focused on foster care support. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. She felt powerful and in control. Then everything changed. The commotion started at the back of the ballroom. Raised voices, security guards moving quickly. Naomi paused mid-sentence, watching as a figure pushed through the crowd. He was thin and disheveled, wearing torn clothing that marked him as homeless. His face was weathered, his beard unkempt. But something about him stopped Naomi cold. Those eyes. She knew those eyes. "You forgot," he screamed, closing the distance between them with surprising speed. "You forgot where you came from. You forgot everything." Security grabbed for him, but he was already there, right in front of her. For one endless moment, Naomi stared into his face, recognition dancing just out of reach. Then his hand connected with her cheek, and the world exploded into chaos. The slap wasn't hard enough to seriously hurt her, but the sound echoed through the silent ballroom like thunder. Naomi's head snapped to the side. Her champagne glass fell. The crowd gasped as one. Security tackled the man to the floor. He fought them, still screaming. "You forgot. You left us all behind. You forgot your promises." Trevor was suddenly beside her, playing the protective husband. "Are you okay?" But Naomi noticed his eyes flickering toward Candace, who stood with her hand over her mouth, looking simultaneously horrified and excited by the drama. The security guards dragged the homeless man toward the exit. Naomi stood frozen, her cheek burning, her mind racing. Who was he? How did he know about her past? "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator's voice boomed through the speakers, trying to restore order. "Please remain calm. Security has everything under control." But nothing was under control. Phones were up everywhere, recording, streaming. This moment was already viral, spreading across social media platforms at light speed. By morning, everyone in the world would see Naomi Patterson getting slapped by a homeless man at her own charity gala. Trevor guided her to a private room. His colleagues followed, forming a protective circle. Candace was among them, her face painted with theatrical concern. "This is terrible," Candace murmured, standing close to Trevor. "Who would do such a thing?" "Probably some mentally ill person," Trevor said. "They fixate on successful people sometimes." "It's not personal, darling." But it felt personal. Very personal. The police arrived quickly. They showed Naomi booking photos and asked questions. The man's name was Robert Lawson, they told her. 38 years old, history of petty crimes, no record of violence. Did she know him? Naomi stared at the photo on the detective's tablet. Robert Lawson. The name meant nothing to her, but those eyes in the photo, she knew them somehow. A memory hovered just out of reach, like a word she couldn't quite remember. "No," she said finally. "I don't know him." The detective seemed satisfied. "He'll be charged with assault." With the number of witnesses and video evidence, it's a straightforward case. He's probably off his medication or high on something. These things happen with the homeless population, unfortunately. I wouldn't take it personally, Mrs. Patterson. After the police left, Trevor checked his phone constantly, monitoring social media. It's everywhere, he kept saying. Someone posted the video. Millions of views already. Naomi barely heard him. She was still thinking about Robert Lawson's face, about the pain in his eyes when he looked at her. About his specific words. You forgot where you came from. How did he know where she came from? Her foster care background wasn't exactly a secret, but she didn't advertise it either. She'd given one interview about it years ago when Patterson Technologies first launched, using it as an inspirational story about overcoming adversity. But she never dwelled on the details, never talked about the specific homes or the people from that time. So how did Robert Lawson know? Trevor convinced her to leave. As they drove home, Naomi watched the city lights blur past her window. She thought about her speech, the one she'd carefully prepared about supporting foster youth and giving back to the community. She'd been so focused on looking good, on crafting the perfect image, that she'd lost track of why it mattered in the first place. At home, she checked on Mia and Jordan, both sleeping peacefully, unaware that their mother's perfect reputation had just been shattered on national television. She stood in their doorway watching them breathe and felt a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. Whatever happened next, she'd protect them. From the media circus, from the divorce that was coming, from Trevor's lies and manipulations. She'd been building a case against her husband for months and nothing had changed. If anything, this incident made her more determined. In her bathroom, she stared at her reflection. Her makeup was smudged, her hair falling out of its elaborate style. Her cheek was still red where Robert had struck her. She looked tired and human and real, nothing like the polished billionaire she'd been presenting to the world. You forgot where you came from, she whispered to her reflection. And suddenly she realized Robert Lawson was right. She had forgotten. She'd been so focused on building her empire, on proving she was more than her past, that she'd stopped thinking about where she started. She'd stopped thinking about the other kids in those foster homes, the ones who didn't escape, who didn't get lucky breaks or find success. She'd left them behind. Just like everyone had left her behind. The thought made her feel sick. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Saw the video. This doesn't change anything with the case. We're still on schedule. Are you okay? Naomi typed back, I'm fine. We proceed as planned. But she wasn't fine. The slap had shaken something loose inside her, some carefully constructed wall she'd built between her past and present. And now, standing in her luxury bathroom in her million-dollar house, she felt more lost than she had in years. The next morning would bring more chaos. The media would tear apart every frame of the video. Internet detectives would dig into her past. People would debate whether she deserved it, whether her wealth made her a valid target, whether Robert Lawson was a hero or a villain. But tonight, alone with the memory of those desperate eyes staring into hers, Naomi allowed herself one truth. She needed to find Robert Lawson. Not to press charges or protect her image, but to understand why his slap felt less like an attack and more like a wake-up call she'd been avoiding for years. Tomorrow everything would change. But first, she had to remember who she'd been before she became Naomi Patterson, billionaire CEO. She had to remember the scared foster kid who'd promised to never forget where she came from. A promise she'd broken somewhere along the way. The media storm was even worse than Naomi expected. By morning, the video had 40 million views across various platforms. Opinion pieces flooded news sites with headlines like, When Wealth Loses Touch with Reality, and Billionaire's Blind Spot, the homeless crisis she ignored. Some defended her, calling the attack unjustified violence. Others praised Robert Lawson as a symbol of the forgotten masses striking back at the elite. Nobody knew the truth, including Naomi. She spent the morning in crisis management mode, working with her PR team to craft statements and control the narrative. Her company's stock dipped 2%, not catastrophic but concerning. She had board members calling, investors texting, employees worried about the company's reputation. Through it all, she kept seeing Robert Lawson's face. Those eyes that felt so familiar. At 2 in the afternoon, she left her office without explanation, something she never did. Her assistant looked shocked when Naomi walked out mid-meeting, but she didn't stop to explain. She just drove, heading toward downtown, toward the county jail where Robert was being held. The detention center was a gray building that felt designed to crush hope. Naomi checked in at the front desk, using her name and influence to request a visit with Robert Lawson. The officer looked skeptical. You're the victim, he said. You sure you want to see him? I'm sure. They made her wait 40 minutes, probably standard procedure to discourage visitors. Naomi sat in the hard plastic chair, surrounded by people waiting to see their loved ones. A woman with 3 small children. An elderly man who looked like he'd been crying. A young couple holding hands like they were facing the end of the world. This was the reality behind her perfect life. The people who didn't escape, who didn't get lucky, who kept falling through the cracks while people like her celebrated charity galas and billion-dollar valuations. Finally they called her name. Led her to a visiting room with thick glass and phones on either side. After another wait, Robert was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked even thinner than he had at the gala, his beard still tangled, his eyes hollowed out by exhaustion. When he saw her through the glass he stopped walking. The guard had to push him gently toward the chair. They sat across from each other, the glass between them feeling symbolic somehow. Naomi picked up the phone. After a moment Robert did the same. Why are you here? His voice was rough from years of hard living. I want to know why you slapped me, Naomi said. How you know about my past? Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. You really don't remember me? Should I? He studied her face and something sad crossed his features. Yeah, you should. But I guess that's the point, isn't it? You forgot all of us. Tell me, Naomi said softly. Parkview Group Home, Robert said. June 2000 to February 2001. You were 12. I was 13. We were there together for 8 months. The memory hit Naomi like a physical blow. Parkview. She pushed most of those memories down so deep she'd almost convinced herself they didn't exist. But now, looking at Robert's weathered face, she could see the ghost of the boy he'd been. Robbie. They called him Robbie back then. He'd been the kid who shared his dessert with the younger children, who stood up to the older kids when they bullied the small ones, who made Naomi laugh during the worst days when she'd wanted to give up completely. Robbie, she whispered. You remember? It wasn't a question. I remember. Tears stung her eyes. I'm sorry. You look so different and it's been 24 years, Robert finished. Long time. Long time to fall through all the cracks society has for people like us. What happened to you? He shrugged. Same thing that happens to a lot of foster kids. Aged out at 18 with no support system, no family, no safety net. Worked odd jobs for a while, but I couldn't keep steady employment. Depression, PTSD from some of the homes we went to. You remember the Hendersons? Naomi's stomach turned. The Hendersons had been one of the worst placements she'd endured. She'd only been there 3 months before a social worker finally believed her complaints and moved her. Robert had been there longer. Eventually I lost my apartment, Robert continued. Ended up on the streets. Been there on and off for 8 years now. Shelter sometimes, but mostly just surviving day to day. Why didn't you reach out to me? I could have helped. Could you? Robert's voice was sharp. I've been watching your rise for years, Naomi. Every time you were on the news, every interview, every magazine cover. You talked about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, about personal responsibility, about how anyone could succeed if they just worked hard enough. You never once mentioned that most foster kids don't get lucky breaks. That most of us just fall and keep falling. Naomi felt shame burn through her. He was right. She'd crafted a narrative of individual success that ignored all the luck and privilege that had helped her. The scholarship that paid for college, the mentor who believed in her, the timing of her first big investor. The gala, she said. Why did you come to the gala? Why slap me? Robert leaned forward, his eyes intense. I wasn't planning to. I was just watching from outside like I do sometimes when I see you on TV or in the papers. I like seeing that someone from Parkview made it out. It gives me hope even when everything else is dark. He paused, his jaw tightening. Then I saw your husband come out with that woman. The one in the red dress. They were together, away from the crowd. Kissing. She said something about you being too busy to notice what was happening in your own marriage. He laughed and said you were the ice queen who only cared about money. Naomi's breath caught. You saw Trevor and Candace. I didn't know their names then. But I was so angry, Naomi. You're this symbol of success, this proof that we can escape. And there you were inside giving speeches about helping others while your husband was outside disrespecting you, mocking you, cheating on you. It made me furious. So you decided to slap me? I decided to wake you up, Robert corrected. I snuck past security, not hard when you look like I do, people assume you're harmless, and I did the only thing I could think of to get your attention. To make you see that you'd gotten so high up that you'd stopped looking at what was right in front of you. Naomi sat back, processing. All this time, she'd been so focused on Trevor's betrayal that she'd missed the bigger picture. Robert hadn't attacked her out of hatred or mental illness. He tried to save her in the only way his desperate mind could conceive. "I'm pressing charges against you," she said quietly. "There are hundreds of witnesses and I need to maintain my credibility for." She stopped. She couldn't tell him about the divorce case, not yet. "I know," Robert said. "I understand. I broke the law. I'll face the consequences. But," Naomi continued, her mind racing, "I'm also going to help you. When this is over after the trial, I'm going to make sure you get real help. Treatment, housing, job placement. Everything you need to get back on your feet. I don't want your charity." "It's not charity," Naomi said firmly. "It's what we owed each other back at Parkview. It's what every kid in the system deserves. Someone who remembers them, who doesn't forget where they came from." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "You really did forget though, didn't you? Not just me. All of us. Every kid who didn't make it out." "I did," Naomi admitted. "And I'm sorry. I was so focused on running away from my past that I left everyone else behind. But I'm done running. And I'm done forgetting." They talked for another 20 minutes before the guard said time was up. Naomi promised to return to get Robert a good lawyer, to make sure he had everything he needed. As she left the detention center and walked into the bright afternoon sun, she felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the weight of new responsibilities. She'd spent years building walls between herself and her past. Robert's slap had cracked those walls. Now she needed to decide what to build in their place. Her phone buzzed with texts. Patricia asking about legal strategy. Her CFO worried about the company's image. Trevor pretending to be concerned about her emotional state while secretly planning to steal everything she'd built. Let them all wait. Right now, Naomi had more important things to handle. She had a brother to save. Because that's what Robert had been at Parkview, the closest thing to family she'd had. And family, real family, didn't forget. Even when it took a slap to remember. Naomi didn't tell Trevor about visiting Robert. She didn't tell anyone except Patricia, who needed to know for legal reasons. "This complicates things," Patricia said during their meeting the next day. "If the media finds out you're helping the man who assaulted you, they'll have questions." "Let them question," Naomi replied. "I'm hiring Robert, the best defense attorney in the state. I'm also paying for his rehabilitation and housing. Make it happen." Patricia raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She'd learned that when Naomi made decisions in that particular tone, debate was pointless. Over the next 3 weeks, Naomi visited Robert 4 more times. Each visit peeled back more layers of their shared past. They talked about Parkview and the other homes they'd been in. They talked about the foster parents who'd tried their best and the ones who'd been openly cruel. They talked about the feeling of being temporary, unwanted, always one step away from being discarded. "You were different than the other kids," Robert told her during their 3rd visit. "You had this fire in you. This determination. I remember you said you were going to be rich someday. That you'd never be hungry or scared or dependent on anyone ever again." "I was angry," Naomi said. "Anger can be powerful fuel. It can also burn you up from the inside." Naomi thought about that. Had her anger burned away parts of herself she needed? Parts like compassion, connection, memory? With Patricia's help, Naomi arranged for Robert to be transferred to a rehabilitation facility that specialized in treating trauma and substance use issues. The charges against him were still pending, but with Naomi refusing to cooperate with prosecution and providing character witnesses who testified to Robert's history of helping others, the district attorney agreed to a plea deal. 6 months in a treatment facility followed by 2 years of supervised probation. "This is the best outcome we could hope for," Robert's attorney told them. "Mrs. Patterson, your advocacy made all the difference." But Naomi didn't feel like she deserved credit. She felt like she was finally paying a debt that was years overdue. While Robert began his treatment, Naomi started another project. She went through her company's corporate giving budget and reallocated $5 million to create the Parkview Foundation, named after the group home where she and Robert had met. The foundation would provide comprehensive support for youth aging out of foster care, housing assistance, job training, mental health services, and educational scholarships. She hired former foster youth to run the programs, people who understood the system from the inside. She partnered with existing organizations that were doing good work. And she made it clear that this wasn't a vanity project or a tax write-off. This was personal. The media coverage shifted. The story was no longer billionaire attacked by homeless man. It became CEO's secret past revealed, and from foster care to billionaire, a story of remembering your roots. Naomi gave interviews, real ones this time, where she talked honestly about the struggle and trauma of growing up in the system. She talked about the kids who didn't make it out, the ones who ended up homeless or incarcerated or dead. She talked about luck and privilege and the myth of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps when you don't even have boots. The response was overwhelming. Other successful adults who'd been in foster care reached out, wanting to help. Donations poured into the foundation. But more importantly, young people currently in the system started contacting her, thanking her for acknowledging their reality instead of pretending success was just about working hard. Through it all, Trevor watched with barely concealed annoyance. This new direction wasn't part of his plan. He'd married the version of Naomi who wanted to forget her past, who was focused solely on building wealth and status. This new version, the one who cared about homeless people and foster kids and messy emotional truths, didn't fit his narrative. "Don't you think you're overdoing it with this foster care stuff?" he asked one evening over dinner. "It's affecting the company's image. Patterson Technologies should be seen as cutting-edge and innovative, not some social services agency." "Patterson Technologies can be both," Naomi replied calmly. "And the company's image is stronger than ever. Our stock is up 3% since we announced the foundation." Trevor frowned. He couldn't argue with numbers. "Just seems like you're getting distracted from what really matters." "And what really matters, Trevor?" "Growth, profit, staying competitive. The things we built this company to do." "I built this company," Naomi corrected quietly. "You worked for it, but I built it." "There's a difference." Something flickered across Trevor's face, anger, maybe, or fear. But he covered it quickly with his charming smile. "Of course, darling. I didn't mean to diminish your accomplishments." But Naomi saw the truth in his eyes. He'd always resented her success. He'd married her when she was still clawing her way up, when he could position himself as the sophisticated one who was teaching her how to navigate high society. Now she was the billionaire and he was the consultant who worked for her company. His ego couldn't handle it. That night, after Trevor fell asleep, Naomi checked the hidden surveillance app Patricia had installed on his phone. Trevor and Candace were getting sloppy in their communications, probably emboldened by Naomi's distraction with Robert and the foundation. Trevor to Candace. "This foster care obsession is perfect actually. When I file for divorce, I can paint her as unstable and distracted. No judge will give her primary custody when she's having a quarter-life crisis about her past." Candace, brilliant. "How's the client list coming?" Trevor, almost done. "Another few weeks and we'll have everything we need to launch tech forward. The investors are getting impatient though. They want to move quickly." Candace, "Tell them to wait. We need to time this perfectly. Once you're divorced and we launch, we'll be unstoppable." Trevor, "Unstoppable and together. I can't wait to leave the Ice Queen behind." Naomi felt nothing reading the messages. No pain, no anger. Just cold calculation. Trevor's arrogance was going to be his downfall. He thought she was distracted, vulnerable, emotional. He had no idea she was playing chess while he was playing checkers. She forwarded the messages to Patricia with a brief note. "He's almost done stealing. When should we move?" Patricia's response came immediately. 2 more weeks. Let him finish so the criminal case is ironclad. Then we strike. 2 more weeks of pretending. 2 more weeks of playing the oblivious wife. Naomi could manage that. She'd managed much worse in her life. The next day, she visited Robert at the rehabilitation facility. He looked better, clean, rested, working through his trauma with professional therapists. They sat in the facility's garden, surrounded by flowers and sunshine. "You're glowing," Robert observed. "What's happening?" "I'm taking my life back," Naomi said simply. "Everything that's been stolen from me, my time, my energy, my sense of self, I'm taking it all back." "Good," Robert said. "You deserve to be happy, Naomi. You deserve to have people around you who see your worth." "So do you," she replied. "That's why when you're done with treatment, I want you to work for the foundation. Not as charity. As family. As someone who understands what we're trying to do because you lived it." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "You trust me with that?" "I trust you with everything," Naomi said. "You're the person who cared enough to slap me awake. That's more than anyone else in my life has done in years." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 survivors of a broken system who'd found each other again. Outside the garden, the world kept spinning. Trevor kept plotting. Candace kept scheming. The media kept debating whether Naomi Patterson was a hero or a hypocrite. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Naomi had remembered who she was and where she came from. And remembering, she'd discovered something she'd lost along the way to becoming a billionaire. She'd rediscovered herself. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning on a Thursday. Naomi had chosen the date carefully. Trevor would be in the office expecting a routine quarterly review. Instead, he was about to get the surprise of his life. She arrived at 9 earlier than usual to prepare. Her assistant had laid out all the materials according to Naomi's precise instructions. Patricia was already there, along with representatives from the cybersecurity firm that had traced Trevor's theft and 2 officers from the corporate fraud division. "Everyone is clear on the plan?" Naomi asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Crystal clear," Patricia confirmed. "We present the evidence, the board votes to terminate, and then we move to the divorce proceedings and criminal charges. By noon, Trevor will have lost his job, his marriage, and his freedom." It sounded harsh when said aloud. But Naomi thought about the 2 years of lies, the stolen company secrets, the plans to take her children. Trevor had shown no mercy in his plotting. She would show none in her response. The board members arrived one by one. Naomi had briefed them individually over the past week, so they knew this wasn't a standard meeting. Their faces were serious, professional. Several of them had worked with Naomi since the beginning, and they were personally offended by Trevor's betrayal. Trevor showed up at exactly 10 o'clock wearing an expensive suit and his trademark confident smile. Candace was with him. She attended board meetings as his assistant, taking notes and managing schedules. They had no idea this was the end. "Good morning, everyone," Trevor said, taking his usual seat. "Should be a quick meeting today, right? Q3 numbers look solid." "Actually," Naomi began, standing at the head of the table, "we have some new business to discuss. Mr. Patterson, I need to inform you that this is a formal disciplinary hearing regarding your conduct as an employee of Patterson Technologies." Trevor's smile faltered. "What? Naomi, what are you talking about? Over the past 3 months, we've conducted a thorough investigation into your activities." Naomi nodded to her assistant, who began distributing folders to each board member. "What you'll find in these documents is comprehensive evidence of corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, and embezzlement of company funds." The room went silent. Trevor looked at Candace, who had gone pale. "This is ridiculous," Trevor said, his voice tight. "I've done nothing wrong. Let's review the evidence." Naomi pulled up a presentation on the large screen. "On February 14th of this year, you began systematically copying our client database to an external hard drive. We have digital forensics showing 247 separate file transfers." The screen showed detailed logs, timestamps, file names. Undeniable proof. "On March 3rd, you met with representatives from Catalyst Ventures to pitch a competing company called Tech Forward Solutions. This company's business plan, which we obtained through legal means, uses Patterson Technologies' proprietary algorithms and client lists." More evidence appeared on screen. Photos of Trevor's meetings, excerpts from the business plan, emails discussing stolen technology. "And finally, you've spent approximately $87,000 of company money on personal expenses, including hotel rooms and jewelry. These charges were made on your corporate credit card and falsely reported as client entertainment." The receipts appeared, one after another. Hotel stays that coincided with Candace's schedule. Expensive gifts that Naomi had never received. Trevor's face had gone from confident to angry to scared. "You've been spying on me? This is a violation of my privacy." "You have no expectation of privacy when using company resources," Patricia interjected smoothly. "Everything Mr. Patterson accessed on company computers, company networks, and company credit cards is legally discoverable. And it shows a clear pattern of theft and fraud. Mr. Patterson," Naomi continued, "you're hereby terminated from Patterson Technologies effective immediately. You have 5 minutes to collect personal belongings from your office under security escort. Your corporate accounts, email, and building access have already been disabled." "You can't do this," Trevor hissed. "I'll sue for wrongful termination. I'll take you for everything you have." Naomi allowed herself a small smile. "Actually, I can do this. And regarding taking everything I have, let's talk about that." She pulled out another document. "I'm also serving you with divorce papers. My attorney has filed for dissolution of marriage on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct." Trevor shot to his feet. "On what grounds? You have no proof of anything." "We have 2 years of documentation," Patricia said calmly. "Text messages, photos, witness statements, hotel records, credit card receipts. Your affair with Miss Candace Reynolds is thoroughly documented." For the first time, Candace spoke. "This is insane." Trevor and I are just colleagues. Save it, Naomi cut her off. Ms. Reynolds, you're also terminated, effective immediately. Additionally, you may be named as a co-defendant in our lawsuit against Mr. Patterson for corporate espionage. I suggest you retain legal counsel. Candace looked like she might be sick. She grabbed Trevor's arm, but he shook her off, too focused on his own sinking ship to save anyone else. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad, Patricia continued, addressing Trevor. You're entitled to nothing from Mrs. Patterson's personal assets or business holdings. The house, the cars, the investment accounts, all remain with her. You'll be responsible for your own legal fees in both the criminal and divorce proceedings. Criminal? Trevor's voice cracked. Yes, criminal, Naomi said. The evidence we've gathered will be turned over to law enforcement for prosecution of corporate espionage and embezzlement. Both are felonies carrying significant prison time. The reality of his situation finally seemed to dawn on Trevor. He'd been so confident in his plan, so certain he was smarter than Naomi, that he'd never considered she might be watching him the whole time. You did this on purpose, he breathed. You let me keep stealing so you could build a bigger case. I did, Naomi confirmed. You were planning to take my children, destroy my company, and humiliate me publicly. I simply returned the favor with interest. That's called business, Trevor. I thought you'd understand. 2 security guards entered the boardroom. Mr. Patterson, Ms. Reynolds, we need to escort you out of the building. Trevor looked around the room at the board members, seeing no sympathy on any face. These were business people. They'd seen the evidence of his betrayal. In their world, that was unforgivable. You'll regret this, Trevor said to Naomi, his voice shaking with rage. You think you've won, but you're going to end up alone. Nobody wants to be with someone as cold and calculating as you. That's why I left. That's why anyone would leave. Naomi met his eyes steadily. I'd rather be alone than be with someone who lies, cheats, and steals. And for the record, you didn't leave, Trevor. You were always planning to take everything from me. But you forgot one important fact. What's that? I grew up with nothing. You grew up with everything. When you have nothing, you learn to fight for survival. When you have everything, you never learn to fight at all. She paused. You never stood a chance. The security guards escorted Trevor and Candace from the room. Their footsteps echoed in the hall, growing fainter until they disappeared entirely. Naomi stood at the head of the table, feeling the weight of the moment. She just destroyed her marriage, ended 2 careers, and set in motion criminal prosecutions. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like justice. The board supports you completely, her chairman said. We'll release a statement this afternoon explaining the terminations and announcing enhanced security measures. This will blow over quickly. Naomi nodded. Thank you. Now let's discuss Q3 numbers. We have a company to run. And they did. For the next 2 hours, they reviewed budgets and projections and strategic plans. Because that was the thing about being a billionaire CEO. Personal drama didn't stop the business from moving forward. But when the meeting ended and Naomi returned to her office alone, she allowed herself one moment of feeling. She'd won. She'd protected her company and her children. She'd made sure Trevor would face consequences for his actions. But winning didn't erase the betrayal. It didn't erase the 2 years of lies or the knowledge that the man she'd married had never really loved her. It didn't make her any less alone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Heard through the grapevine something big happened today. You okay? Naomi smiled despite everything. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'm free. And she was. For the first time in years, she was completely, utterly free. Now she just had to figure out what to do with that freedom. The story broke within hours. By evening, every major news outlet was covering the fall of Trevor Patterson. The headlines were brutal and satisfying in equal measure. Tech consultant accused of corporate espionage. Billionaire CEO exposes husband's 2-year affair and theft. From power couple to divorce court, the Patterson scandal. Naomi's phone exploded with calls and messages. Investors wanting to reassure her of their continued support. Friends shocked by the revelations. Media requests for exclusive interviews. Her publicist was working overtime to manage the narrative. But the message that mattered most came from her children's school. The principal wanted to meet to discuss the situation and ensure Mia and Jordan were supported during this difficult transition. That was Naomi's biggest fear, that her decision to expose Trevor would hurt their children. She'd built an airtight legal case, but she couldn't protect them from the emotional fallout. She picked them up from school herself that afternoon, something she'd been doing regularly since reconnecting with Robert. They climbed into her car with their backpacks, both unusually quiet. "Mom," Mia said carefully, "some kids at school said Daddy did bad things. Is that true?" Naomi pulled over to the side of the road so she could turn and look at them properly. "Yes, it's true. Daddy made some very bad choices that hurt our family and hurt my company. He's going to have consequences for those choices." "Is he going to jail?" Jordan asked, his eyes wide. "Maybe. I don't know yet. But I want you both to understand something important." She reached back and took both their hands. "What Daddy did isn't your fault. And it doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Adults sometimes make terrible mistakes, but that doesn't change how much you're loved. Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" Mia's voice was small. "Yes, we are." "I knew something was wrong," Mia said quietly. "Daddy was acting different. And you seemed sad even when you were smiling." Naomi's heart broke a little. Kids noticed everything even when adults thought they were hiding the truth. "I'm sorry you had to feel that," Naomi said. "I was trying to protect you, but maybe I should have been more honest. Things are going to change. Daddy won't be living with us anymore. But you'll still see him and you'll still have both parents who love you very much." "Will we have to move?" Jordan asked. "No, sweetie. We're staying in our house. Your rooms stay the same. Your schools stay the same. As much as possible, your normal life stays the same." Over the following days, Naomi worked with a child therapist to help Mia and Jordan process the divorce. She made sure they understood that their father's crimes didn't define them. She answered their questions honestly but age-appropriately. And she made sure they knew that her love for them was the one constant in the chaos. Trevor tried to use the children as leverage. He demanded joint custody, threatened to fight for primary placement, claimed Naomi was too busy with work to be a proper parent. But Patricia had documentation of Naomi's increased involvement with the kids over the past months, while Trevor's own text messages showed he'd been prioritizing his affair over his children. The custody hearing was brief. The judge, faced with evidence of Trevor's adultery, theft, and deceit, awarded Naomi primary custody with Trevor getting supervised visitation until his criminal case was resolved. "This is temporary," the judge explained to Trevor. "If you're convicted of felony charges, we'll revisit the custody arrangement. For now, the court finds that Mrs. Patterson provides a more stable environment for the children." Trevor's attempt to launch tech-forward solutions collapsed spectacularly. Once investors learned the company was built on stolen technology, they pulled their funding. Catalyst Ventures even sued Trevor for fraud, claiming he'd misrepresented his rights to the intellectual property. Candace, meanwhile, struggled to find employment. Word spread quickly in the tech industry about her role in the affair and corporate espionage. Nobody wanted to hire someone who couldn't be trusted with confidential information. But Naomi didn't focus on their failures. She had her own rebuilding to do. The Parkview Foundation launched officially 6 weeks after Trevor's termination. The media coverage was extensive and overwhelmingly positive. Naomi appeared on national television to discuss foster care reform, bringing Robert with her. He'd completed his initial treatment and was now the foundation's community outreach director. "This is Robert Lawson," Naomi told a primetime audience. "The homeless man who slapped me at my charity gala." What the viral video didn't show was that Robert and I grew up together in foster care. He slapped me because he saw me losing sight of what mattered. He tried to wake me up, and it worked. The interviewer leaned forward. "That's an extraordinary act of forgiveness, welcoming him into your organization after he assaulted you." "It wasn't assault," Naomi corrected firmly. "It was a desperate act from someone who'd been failed by every system designed to help him. Robert didn't attack me out of hatred. He did it out of love. The complicated, fierce love of someone who refused to let me forget where I came from." Robert, sitting beside her, added, "I spent years watching Naomi's success and feeling proud but also abandoned. When I saw her husband disrespecting her at that gala, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I wanted her to know that there were people from her past who still cared, who still needed her to remember." The interview went viral for different reasons this time. People were moved by the story of 2 foster kids reconnecting. Donations to the Parkview Foundation tripled. And perhaps most importantly, hundreds of former foster youth reached out, wanting to share their stories and get support. Patterson Technology stock didn't just recover, it soared. The company's reputation shifted from successful tech firm to successful tech firm with a social conscience. Corporate clients wanted to work with them. Talented employees wanted to join them. Investors saw not just profit potential but purpose. Naomi appeared on magazine covers, but now the headlines were different. The CEO who remembered her roots. From foster care to billionaire. Naomi Patterson's journey of redemption. Why this Silicon Valley leader says vulnerability is her superpower. 6 months after the board meeting that ended her marriage, Naomi stood in the Parkview Foundation's new headquarters. The building used to be a bank, but now it was a resource center for foster youth. There were computers for job applications, meeting rooms for counseling sessions, a commercial kitchen for life skills training, and apartments upstairs for young people transitioning out of group homes. "This is incredible," Robert said, walking through the space with tears in his eyes. "Kids like us would have killed for something like this." "Kids like us deserve something like this," Naomi corrected. "Nobody should have to fight as hard as we did just to survive." That evening, after the Foundation's open house celebration, Naomi went home to her children. The house felt different now, quieter without Trevor but also more peaceful. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Mia and Jordan had adjusted better than she'd expected. They still loved their father, but they seemed to understand that sometimes families had to change shape to become healthier. "Mom," Mia said at dinner, "I told my teacher about the Foundation today. She said we could do a food drive for the kids who live there." "That's a wonderful idea," Naomi said, her heart swelling with pride. "And I'm going to give them my old toys," Jordan added. "Because everyone should have toys." Naomi looked at her children, her smart, compassionate, resilient children, and realized they were going to be okay. Better than okay. They were learning that family wasn't about maintaining perfect images. It was about being honest, showing up, and caring for each other through the hard times. That night, after the kids were asleep, Naomi sat on her back patio looking at the stars. Her life looked nothing like she'd imagined it would 6 months ago. She was divorced, single, co-parenting with a man facing potential criminal charges. Her private life had been dissected by millions of strangers on the internet. But she was also happier than she'd been in years. She'd remembered who she was. She'd reconnected with her purpose. She'd built something that mattered, not just a profitable company, but a foundation that would help thousands of kids avoid the fate that had nearly claimed both her and Robert. Her phone buzzed with an email from her board chairman. "Q4 projections are extraordinary. The Foundation's impact on company reputation has exceeded all expectations. You've turned a crisis into the company's defining moment. Well done." Naomi smiled. Success was good, but purpose was better. And for the first time in her life, she had both. The ceremony was small and private, exactly how Naomi wanted it. 8 months had passed since the slap that changed everything. 8 months of divorce proceedings, criminal trials, rebuilding, and healing. Trevor had accepted a plea deal that included 3 years of probation, restitution of the embezzled funds, and a permanent ban from working in the tech industry. He was living in a small apartment across town, seeing Mia and Jordan every other weekend under supervision. Candace had disappeared from public view entirely, reportedly working in retail and avoiding social media where people still occasionally recognized her as that woman from the Patterson scandal. But Naomi wasn't focused on them anymore. She'd moved past revenge into something better, purpose. The Foster Care Excellence Awards were being held at a hotel ballroom, but not a fancy one like the gala where Robert had slapped her. This was a practical space where former foster youth, social workers, and advocates gathered to celebrate progress and discuss challenges. No champagne fountains or ice sculptures. Just real people doing real work. Naomi was receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award, which felt absurd since she was only 36. But as the presenter explained, it wasn't about her age. It was about her impact. In 8 months, the Parkview Foundation has provided housing assistance to 400 young people aging out of foster care. It's helped 217 people find employment. It's given scholarships to 86 students attending college or trade schools. And perhaps most importantly, it's changed the conversation about what foster youth deserve. Not charity but investment. Not pity but opportunity. The audience applauded. Naomi stood and walked to the podium, Robert by her side. He'd insisted on being there, standing with her as she accepted the award just as he'd stood with her through the hardest parts of the past year. "Thank you," Naomi began, her voice steady. "But I want to be honest about something. 8 months ago, I didn't deserve this award. I was a billionaire who'd forgotten where she came from. I was so focused on running away from my past that I left everyone else behind." She paused, looking at the audience full of social workers and advocates and young people who were still fighting for their chance. Then a man I'd known 24 years ago slapped me at a charity gala. The video went viral. Millions of people saw it. Most of them debated whether I deserved it, whether he was right or wrong, whether homeless people should be allowed near billionaires. There were uncomfortable laughs in the audience. Everyone remembered the video. But here's what they didn't see. They didn't see that Robert wasn't attacking me, he was trying to wake me up. He'd watched me succeed and felt proud but also abandoned. He'd seen me give speeches about overcoming adversity while ignoring the people still stuck in that adversity. And when he saw my husband disrespecting me at that gala, treating me like I was worthless, Robert couldn't stay quiet anymore. She turned to Robert, who stood with tears streaming down his face. He slapped me because he loved me. Because we were family at Parkview Group Home when we had nobody else. Because he remembered our promises to each other, that if we ever escaped, we'd come back for the others. I'd broken that promise. Robert's slap was him calling me home. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. The truth is, success had made me forget what mattered. I thought building a billion-dollar company was enough. I thought having money and status and influence proved I'd overcome my past. But real success isn't forgetting where you came from, it's remembering and bringing others with you. She held up the award, a simple glass sculpture. I accept this not for what I've done, but for what I'm committing to do. The Parkview Foundation is just the beginning. I'm pledging $100 million over the next 5 years to expand our programs nationwide. I'm committing Patterson Technologies to prioritizing hiring former foster youth. And I'm using my platform to keep telling these stories until people understand that foster care isn't a charity issue, it's a justice issue. The applause started slowly, then built to a standing ovation. But Naomi wasn't finished. Most importantly, I want to thank Robert Lawson. The media called you a homeless man who attacked a billionaire. I call you my brother who saved my life. Everything good that's happened since that night started with you refusing to let me forget. So this award is yours as much as mine. She handed him the sculpture. Robert held it like it was made of diamonds, his hands shaking. When the ceremony ended, Naomi was surrounded by people wanting to share their stories, to thank her, to ask for help. She listened to every single one, took business cards, made promises she fully intended to keep. This was her life now. Not just board meetings and profit margins, but real conversations with real people about real problems. Hours later, exhausted but fulfilled, she drove home through the city. Her phone rang as she pulled into her driveway. Patricia. Just got the final divorce decree, Patricia said. It's over. You're officially single. How do I feel about that? Naomi asked. How do you feel about it? Naomi thought about Trevor, about the years she'd spent trying to be the perfect wife to a man who'd never really seen her. She thought about the loneliness of her marriage, the feeling of being successful and admired but fundamentally alone. I feel free, she said finally. I feel like myself for the first time in years. Good. That's the right answer. Patricia paused. You know, I've handled a lot of divorces. Most of my clients are destroyed by them. But you're thriving. You took your worst moment and turned it into your best year. I had help, Naomi said, thinking of Robert, of her children, of all the people who'd supported her through the transformation. Inside her house, Mia and Jordan were waiting with the nanny. They'd made her a card congratulating her on the award, complete with crayon drawings of the foundation building and stick figures of her and Robert. We're proud of you, Mom, Mia said, hugging her tightly. I'm proud of you too, Naomi replied, meaning it completely. That night, after the kids were asleep, Naomi stood in her home office looking at the city lights. So much had changed in 8 months. She'd lost a husband but gained a brother. She'd been publicly humiliated but rebuilt her reputation stronger than before. She'd been forced to remember her past and discovered it was the key to her future. She thought about the girl she'd been at 18, aging out of foster care with nothing but determination and fear. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, the success, the betrayal, the public scandal, the redemption, would that girl believe her? Probably not. But she'd survived it all anyway, just like she'd survived everything else life threw at her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. Thank you for tonight. For everything. You saved my life. Naomi texted back. You saved mine first. That's what family does. And that was the truth that had set her free. Not money or status or revenge. But remembering that family, real family, wasn't about blood or marriage certificates. It was about showing up for each other, even when showing up meant doing hard things like slapping someone awake at a charity gala. Naomi looked at her reflection in the dark window. She saw a woman who'd built an empire, survived betrayal, and remembered her humanity. She saw someone who was flawed and strong and still learning. She saw someone who'd stopped running from her past and started building a future that honored it. She saw herself. Finally, completely, honestly. And for the first time in her 36 years, that was enough. The slap had hurt. The betrayal had devastated. The public scandal had been humiliating. But all of it had led here, to this moment, to this peace. Robert's desperate act hadn't destroyed her. Trevor's betrayal hadn't broken her. The viral video hadn't defined her. Instead, they'd all combined to reveal who she really was beneath the polished billionaire exterior. Someone who survived. Someone who remembered. Someone who came back for the others. Someone who finally understood that the truth didn't destroy you. It set you free. 1 year later. The Parkview Foundation's second annual gala was nothing like the first event where everything had changed. Instead of a luxury hotel, they held it at the foundation's headquarters, showing donors exactly where their money went. Naomi wore a simple dress, not designer. Her hair was natural. Her makeup was minimal. She looked successful but approachable, powerful but human. Robert stood beside her, healthy and strong, a year sober and thriving in his role. Several other former foster youth worked the event, sharing their stories and the foundation's impact on their lives. Mia and Jordan circulated through the crowd, confident and kind, helping to serve food and talking to guests about why the foundation mattered to them. Trevor wasn't there, of course. He was rebuilding his life elsewhere, trying to find work and repair his reputation. Naomi hoped he found peace eventually, not for his sake but for their children's. Hatred took too much energy and she had better things to do. As Naomi gave her speech, no teleprompter, just speaking from her heart, she looked out at the audience and saw faces that represented her journey. Social workers who tried their best in an impossible system. Former foster youth who were succeeding despite the odds. Donors who understood that changing lives required investment, not just charity. And in the back of the room she saw a news crew recording. Tomorrow this would be a story again. But this time the headline wouldn't be about scandal or betrayal or viral slaps. It would be about something better. About remembering. About returning. About using success to lift others instead of leaving them behind. None of us escape alone, Naomi said, concluding her speech. We all need someone who refuses to let us forget where we came from. For me, that person was Robert. His slap wasn't violence, it was love. Fierce, desperate, uncomfortable love. The kind that wakes you up and brings you home. She raised her glass. To everyone here who's fighting for foster youth. To everyone who remembers their roots. And to Robert Lawson, the man who loved me enough to slap me awake. Thank you for not letting me forget. The audience raised their glasses, but Robert walked up to the podium and pulled Naomi into a hug. She held him tight, this brother who'd saved her life by risking everything to remind her who she was. We made it, he whispered. We did, Naomi agreed. And we're taking everyone else with us. When the event ended and the guests filed out into the night, Naomi stood in the empty room with Robert, Mia, and Jordan. Her real family. The people who saw her completely and loved her anyway. Come on, she said, gathering her children. Let's go home. And they did. Not to a mansion designed to impress, but to a home filled with honest love and hard-won peace. The truth had set her free. And freedom, Naomi had learned, was worth any price.